Compassion fatigue is something we have to deal with as technicians specifically. We have a very physical job. And so there is a point where our bodies just can't do it anymore for whatever reasons. Maybe our minds can't do it anymore, but maybe our body actually physically cannot crawl around on the floor with dogs anymore. But that doesn't mean you have to leave the industry. Your knowledge, your experience is something that can be so useful for so many other parts of the industry.
Welcome to Leading Veterinary Teams, the podcast for people-first leaders in veterinary medicine who are ready to ditch the burnout script and lead with purpose. I'm Suzanne Thomas, veterinary technician, executive coach, and fellow leader in the trenches. Around here, we talk real-life leadership, boundaries, influence, team culture, and what it actually takes to build happy, high-performing hospitals. No fluff, no guilt, just the truth, some tools, and maybe a little tough love. If you're ready, let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome back to Leading Veterinary Teams on Air. Today's guest is someone I'm really excited to bring into this space, someone who's worn just about every hat in this field, from general practice to ER to shelter medicine, and now spends her days helping our industry think differently about engagement and retention. I'm joined by Lucy Nash, RVT, an experienced technician, relief RVT, customer experience leader, speaker, and someone who's deeply committed to building a healthier, more sustainable workplace in VetMed. Lucy, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. And again, I really hope I live up to the intro there. So thank you again for letting me join. I've been super excited to chat with you about leadership. I love everything that you promote with leadership in veterinary medicine. It's a topic that's really close to my heart.
Absolutely. So jumping right in, for people who don't know you, who haven't met you, which I can't even imagine that's possible, but for people who haven't met you, how do you introduce yourself in the field?
I know I'm just that face that's always at conferences. So even if you haven't met me by name, you've probably seen me running around one of the conferences with different people and sorting out some different stuff. But yes, as Suzanne mentioned, I'm an RVT. I started off in clinical practice. Being in vet med wasn't my first career. I actually came to vet med a little bit later because I fell in love with working with animals. And my first job in vet med was actually shelter medicine. I was a volunteer at my local shelter, and I just was having a career crisis in my previous career and didn't know what to do about that. Followed my heart and jumped into veterinary medicine. Spent 10 years working in clinical practice. I always hate telling this part because it sounds like it's a negative thing, but I was a statistic of burnout. But I do hope that my story is a more positive one of what you can do with that and how you can come out the other side. So while I was burnt out and working in clinical practice, I thought I found my dream job and it just wasn't the right fit for me. And I learned it wasn't the job, it was me, and it wasn't what I thought was my dream. I didn't want to leave the industry completely. So I was fortunate enough to actually be offered a job in the industry side. I actually worked for a pet food company for a number of years and realized that there are so many other careers for vet techs in vet med that isn't in clinical practice. There's so many roles where what we do and how we do things and the medical knowledge and the input we have can be so useful in so many different places. And a couple of years ago, I was fortunate enough to meet the team from Hound, which is where I work currently. And they are so big on the entire team, everyone from vets, vet techs, assistants, practice managers, CSRs, leadership, everyone loving where they work, finding the place that is the most perfect place for you. And that was something that really resonated with me, especially from my burnout story. And I've been working with them for a number of years now. So that's where most people probably see me at conferences, working with the Hound team. I'm the community partnership manager. So what I get to do is provide fun resources and educational resources for vet team members who maybe don't have access to them through their job or through other means.
What a wild journey, right? Having worked in the clinics and now being able to support the clinics is a really exciting thing. A lot of technicians feel that they have to leave practices to grow. And I know that you didn't really leave the practice to grow, really, right? You left because of burnout and you didn't want to necessarily leave the industry, but you've built your path to include both practice and industry, because while you're in the industry, you're still connected to the practice, right? So you find this way to still stay in it even though you're not in it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's a testament to learning, and that's been where my growth has been, I think, is for me personally, is learning where people from vet med, slight tangent here, but I'm sure you may have got told this as a technician, and some of the leaders and techs that are listening, when you start being like you say you want to be a vet tech or you start a vet tech school, you're often told, oh, the average career span for a vet tech is like 5 to 7 years. And that's really scary, especially when you're about to drop 30K on going to school or more. I don't even know how much it is anymore.
Yeah.
To be told like, oh, you're probably going to last 5 to 10 years max on this. But it's learning that you have other opportunities there and ways to grow and use that. Your knowledge that you gain during that time is super useful. And that's been really good for me. I've been able to apply the things I've learned in clinic to out of clinic, and the things I've learned out of clinic to help clinics as well, with like just using those different skill sets.
What you just said about using those different skill sets makes me think about how you've navigated those multiple roles, the clinical, the relief, the now leadership, speaking. I know you do some speaking engagements, the partnership management. What do you wish that hospital leaders understood more about the skill set of an RVT, of I'm an LVT and a CVT, it's all the same, that really that we bring to the table? What do you wish that hospital managers understood more about the skill sets that we have?
Yeah, honestly, just that we have those skill sets. Like a lot of RVTs, there are a lot of people that come straight out of school and go into vet med as RVTs. What I have found from my community of veterinary technicians and even vet assistants, a lot of them did other things first. They weren't, even if it's just a job through college, like they weren't necessarily working in vet med. They may have been working in retail, in some kind of customer service, in some kind of other avenue of medical industry, even in a completely different industry altogether. And there's skills you learn there. Like we learn at school a lot of medical skills. Like you're learning about disease processes and on surgery and things like that. But we don't always get taught the, I hate saying soft skills because they're not soft skills, but that's how most people commonly know
Yeah.
them. But like that line you hear all the time of I don't like people, so I want to work with animals. And so vet med is still working with people. You have to talk to the person attached to the animal. And so there's so many skills you can learn, especially vet techs. And so I do think a lot of, I will say, I'm going to say this at the beginning, I think there's a lot of practice managers there out and leaders out there that are realizing this now and know this. We definitely need more of them, and we need to amplify those ones that are like this. But just knowing vet techs and vet assistants and everyone in your team has these skills and being able to put them to good use and utilize them. Find out if someone's really good at talking to people. Like my clinic used to always send me in to go talk to the clients because I don't know how to shut up. And so they're like, here, you go talk. I don't want to talk to the owner about what's going on with their diabetic cat. So you go in and talk to them and you'll get all the information, and they'll be really happy that they got someone who spoke to them for 10 minutes about it.
Yeah.
So talk to your staff, learn what their skill sets are and help them hone them and utilize them.
Yeah. Do you think that your not being able to shut up is because you are just that kind of person? Or do you think, and I did a little bit of digging, before you came into vet med, you worked in finance and you also worked Blizzard, correct?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
My brother actually also worked at Blizzard.
Oh,
He
that's
was
so
in
cool.
Austin, Texas.
Oh,
And he was in customer service. I don't know where you worked in Blizzard, but
I did customer service too.
I imagine that if you were in customer service prior, I don't know what you did in finance, but I imagine if you worked in customer service in some capacity before, just because you're comfortable talking to people, yes, that is one skill that you need. But if you were also involved in some sort of customer service prior to being in vet med, that probably helped you.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think especially because my role within finance was in the customer service part of it too. I worked as a CPA's assistant. So I was managing all of their clients. So they didn't always, obviously, they met with him when they had important stuff, but I was the gatekeeper in between them and him. And so you get people in those, especially in customer service in any industry, and then in finance specifically, you're getting people who you're dealing with things that are very important to them. You're dealing with their money, or like in customer service, it depends where you are, but you're normally dealing with something that's important to them. And so you learn that you have to be very tactile about it. You have to remember that while you're not there, sorry, how do I word this better? You are not the only person that they're not the only person you're speaking to today about the subject, but you are the only person they can speak to. And so it's the most important thing between you and them at that point. And that really does apply for vet med. Like I worked in emergency and critical care for about 4 years. And the biggest thing I always had to remember and remind the rest of the team was you're dealing with people who are coming in at their worst moments. So they are going to be a little bit snappy and they may just be a little bit rude. And yes, of course, we should not be encouraging that. And we should be not letting them get away with it if they are being like abusive and things like that. But you also have to remember some empathy there of like their baby is coming in critically ill. You're having to give them some bad news. You don't know the scale of what you're telling them. Then you're going to also have to dump a finance conversation on them.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's a harder conversation than having with them about what's going on with their pet. And just having to have that like empathy of like you as a tech or you as a doctor, or you as a support staff are having 90 of those conversations a day, but that person's only having one.
Yeah.
And so you just have to remember that.
Yeah, for
And I
sure.
think customer service and retail and things like that really do help you like learn those skills.
Yeah, for sure. I actually came from retail before vet meds. It's interesting because a lot of people, when they tell their story of their like come up story in vet med, they talk about, I grew up in vet med, and I'm like, I didn't. I grew up in
I didn't.
retail. Yeah. And when people talk about, and I work currently and I've only, in my experience in vet med, I've only ever worked in corporate vet med. And there's always this rumbling of people being brought in the higher ups that don't come from vet med, and people have their thoughts and feelings about that. I personally love it because I don't come originally from vet med. And I think that there's, as long as people come with open eyes and want to learn, it's good for us to also learn from them because of that, right? I came with this plethora of customer service experience and knowledge that I brought to my experience, but I also learned so much about medicine and how we navigate this customer journey and this customer experience, but I use what I knew and I put it together, and it sounds like you did the same. And so I think if we're able to keep our minds open and get curious about what new people with their experiences are coming in with, regardless of what their background is, and if they're curious about us, like we can have a really good, diverse conversation.
Yeah. And I think you hit a nail right on the head there is like both parties coming in with an open mind.
Yeah.
Because I get it. There's a lot of like scarcity in vet med that someone who is not from vet med comes in and wants to change everything because they don't understand the protocols and they don't understand how things always have been. And again, that's my least favorite phase in vet med is this is how things have always been. That's great, but we evolve and change and that's how things get better.
Yeah.
And I think everyone coming in with an open mind and being able to share what their experiences are, there's a little bit of trial and error. Hey, let's try this thing. Oh, it didn't work. Cool. Okay, then how do we adapt and make it so it's better? But yeah, I think honestly, there's a lot of things that vet med can learn from other industries, especially the service industries. And there's a lot of things that we can teach other industries as well.
Yeah, for sure. With your current work, is there, in working with employee engagement and retention, is there, are there patterns that you see that connect that customer service with the employee engagement?
Yeah, a little bit. Again, it's like those skills we focus a lot, and I think I see a lot of times when people are trying to concentrate. We're current economic situation we're in, the situation in the world we're in right now, everyone's trying to do what they can to keep client retention. And they want to focus on making that client experience better and things like that. But I think sometimes what is forgotten is that you also want your team to have that retention experience too, because that will actually help with client retention as well. Like I worked in a hospital for many years where the team, I think we were a very small team. There was only like 6 of us, and we had a very small turnover. Myself and the other technician were both there on and off, fair enough, for 5 years. The doctor was the same. We rotated out kennel attendants and assistants because most of them were going to tech school and they were coming to us to get experience and then going to tech school and then coming back.
Yeah.
A lot of things like that. But the clients knew us all by name, and so they were happy to talk to us as the technicians or the assistants or even the receptionists about things that were going on. They saw familiar faces all the time. And so I think some of those skills of remembering, like, giving that customer the best experience, you also want your team to have a good experience too, because then they stay and then they give the customers the best experience.
Yeah.
And that's a whole team effort then, and that's what it should be.
Yeah. Something that I talk about a lot is something that I learned in a business 101 class, which is when you take care of your people, they take care of you. And I think sometimes that message gets muddled as far as what do you mean take care of us? And what I mean by that is that your business is taken care of, right? Is your customers are taken care of, is that when your people are happy, then everything else falls into place. Do
Yeah.
you see any like culture shifts that happen that make a really big impact on the hospital? Anything that the leaders can do to like actually make a shift now to help with
Yeah.
the teams with retention and making their teams happier?
Honestly, I think the biggest and probably the smallest, but it has the biggest impact shift a lot of leaders can make is having their team be involved in decisions and in input in SOP deciding things like that. Now, I know that can be a little bit harder sometimes when it's corporate versus independent, but there are still ways to do that, to have people involved in those decisions. Because if your team feels like they have skin in the game of how these things are decided and how things are impacted, they feel like they're being more utilized. And one of the things I always like to talk about is it's the buzzwords are vet tech utilization, but honestly, it's team utilization in general. If the team feel like they're involved and they're part of important decisions and their voices can be heard, even if they're not, their idea isn't used, they feel like they can still come with ideas and things like that. I think that's a really small change that leaders can have. A really awesome practice manager I know here in Southern California, once I went attended a webinar with her, and she was talking about if you are building a new SOP as a company, what you should do is have a team meeting. And every hospital has one of those negative Nancy's, right? Who's, this is not going to work. It's never going to be helpful, whatever, all those things. And she was like, give it to that person and say, hey, we haven't implemented this yet, but this is the SOP we're thinking of. Pick holes in it. Come and tell us what's wrong with it. And then they're sitting there and they're going to work out, like, hopefully what they'll do. And what they do, she said, in most of the cases where she saw this happen, 9 times out of 10, they were like, well, this won't work because of XYZ, but here's how we could do that instead. And so say, hey, come with, don't just come with problems, come with solutions to the problems as well. But here, pick apart this new SOP and tell us where we can make it better. And that team member is then super involved in that. And you're getting people who are in the trenches day to day working out how that procedure works. And then you end up with a better policy out of it because everyone knows it's going to work and the team feel like they inputted into it. So they are more likely to follow it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that works when you have a team that feels safe to give their input.
Yeah, that's definitely a harder thing. And that's why I think sometimes with these kind of things, it does need to be baby steps. It needs to be small little things. Like, and you have to provide like safety in the workplace, and psychological safety is a really big thing, especially in our current climate. Like people are staying in jobs, but or they're going for a job that is down the street. It's going to pay them $2 an hour more because that's just the money. But there's little things that could have been done at their clinic to stop them from leaving,
Yeah.
and things like that. So I think while that sounds like it's a big grand step of have them be more involved, you can 100% start that as smaller steps, like just giving people a heads up that SOPs are changing, or again, just like letting them read through it and give some input and providing safe space. Let people give their feedback and hear it. Even if you don't implement it, just let them know it's been heard.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that I post a lot on social media and I'll get these like comments that I'm like, wow, I can't, this kind of person follows me because I feel like my posts are generally geared in a positive direction. So I post about delegating to your team. It's a little bit different than what you're talking about, but giving them space to input some things. And
Yeah.
somebody posted, yeah, then on all the surveys, they say that they delegates all of their work. And I was like, because I'm like, okay, but so if your survey is saying that, then there's something else going on here because
You're
that
not,
means that
the feedback is, yeah.
that means that you didn't set your expectations clear, right?
Right.
that means that your delegation wasn't done well then, right?
Yeah.
If you're giving everything away, then yes, that's not what we're saying here.
There's also an element, and it's something I think vet med, like in clinical practice as well, and for leaders, this is something you guys can definitely like work on. Everyone, we can all work on this a little bit better. This is not a dig at any leaders, but like it's perception. The team see that you're delegating a lot of things out. So as far as they're concerned, you're not doing anything. But actually, in a lot of cases, the leaders are delegating things out to try and help people feel utilized. And also because they are snowed under in so many things, but the team don't see all the other work they're doing. And so they just think, oh, you're handing off everything so that you can peace out and go home early or do those kind of things. And so there needs to be probably in that case a lot more elements of transparency of what people are doing. And
Yeah.
if you are delegating, I think you just said it there as well, transparency and why that's being delegated and the why behind, hey, I would love X person. I'd really like if you could maybe take charge of inventory and deal with that, because while you're doing that, I can deal with the HR or payroll or make sure everyone's getting their benefits and things like that. And just because the leaders are not in the office doesn't mean they're not doing things from home.
Yeah.
So just transparency on why things are being delegated, why things are being asked of the team, and then also what everyone's role is and what they're doing. There needs to be a lot more transparency in those things. And that will generally avoid a lot of the pushback. A lot of the pushback is because people just don't know.
Yeah.
People will argue about things they don't know.
Yeah. It's that clarity piece, right? It's the people
Right.
are thinking the worst because they're in the dark. There's no
Yeah.
clarity because people are not talking, or there's this assumption that there's assumptions being made by the leaders that the team should just know, and assumptions by the team that the leaders are not doing anything, that they're offloading or they're lazy or whatever. And that happens
Right.
both ways too, right? That there's assumptions, this like culture thing that happens where the leaders, or this like martyr culture that leaders can sometimes fall into, thinking that the team is the problem, right? People are lazy, people are whatever. And maybe there's actually something much bigger happening. And I don't know if that was any kind of contributor to your burnout, but I know that was definitely a contributor to mine when I burned out, is that people were assuming something without actually checking in on me. And
Oh yeah,
I was
100%.
part of a broken system, right? There was nothing wrong with me, but I was part of a broken system. And
Yeah.
I didn't have a leader that asked questions and got curious. I had people that were just judging me for whatever was happening instead of asking what was actually going on. And now I lead from a place, and I help others lead from a place of checking in on people before we just assume that they're lazy or not motivated or whatever.
Yeah.
If we're noticing a problem, let's ask some more questions before we just jump to termination.
It's lead with curiosity and then also be transparent about things. Like
Yeah.
the one I used to hear a lot was, oh, their team, some white person are just always in the back. They're not doing anything. And so, but if you actually went into the back and looked, like 9 times out of 10, they were in kennels calming down a pet or replacing a bandage or just cleaning up an area that it was like, hey, I'm going to do this now because there's nothing going on up front that I need to be dealing with. So I'm going to go and start maybe something that's normally done at end of day procedure can be done now.
Yeah.
And so that helps us out later on. Or but sometimes it's, oh, you're playing with puppies and kittens all day, or you're just in the back playing with the animals. But that is still something that's important in vet med. If that pet is scared in a kennel
Yeah.
and you're spending some time with them, that is actually beneficial to the pet, the owner. Like when the pet goes back less stressed out,
Yeah.
that's a good thing. And so,
Yeah.
like, you just, again, leading with curiosity and questions, and then providing transparency on why things are being delegated and having the team be part of that is, again, things that can be made in baby steps,
Yeah.
but should be eventually like really easy things that can be implemented.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, for me, what all of that says is that's building that first layer of trust. And once that
Right.
layer of trust is built, then people will feel more safe to be able to speak up and give their input in situations like an SOP or whatnot. And then it's up to the leader to make sure that when somebody gives their input, what do you do with that? Are
Yeah.
you like, how are you responding? Are you responding like, what kind of input is that? Or are you responding, even if you're not going to use it, are you responding, oh, that's interesting. That's actually a really good idea. Let me put that down and let's see if that's something that could work for us.
Yeah, that's something. So my current role with Hound is I'm a community partnership manager, but when I joined, I started as customer experience manager. So my job was working with clinics and helping them build up their accounts, making sure that they were getting everything working. Now, a large chunk of that was on recruiting and helping them find relief workers and things like that. But one of the tools Hound has is Rally, which is an employee engagement and retention platform. And when we would talk to team members about that, one of the parts of that was there was an area of the platform where people can provide feedback to their manager. So it can be anonymous or it can be attributed. If they didn't feel comfortable saying it in person, there was a way they could just send a message, and it would only the managers would see it. It wasn't going to be shown to the whole team. And what I used to always talk to leaders about with that is it doesn't matter what they say in there, you have to respond and at least let them know they were heard, because that is the biggest thing, is knowing that they can come to you and you've acknowledged that they have given you that piece of feedback, good, bad, negative, something stupid. Like, honestly, one of the ones someone told me about was like, someone was like, we need different coffee in the coffee maker in the break room. Like, it's a really small and silly request that they couldn't feel comfortable saying it in person, but that might just be a person. Everyone learns and communicates
Yeah.
differently. But I was like, even if you just respond going, hey, thank you for your feedback, we'll see if we can look into this. Or if it's something that you truly can't, it's a wild suggestion. Thank you for your feedback. I'm not sure if that's something we can work on at this time, but glad to know that's something that's important to you. Like, just acknowledging that. And that's something we used to talk about to leaders all the time with that particular part of the platform, is like, find ways of making sure your team are heard and then making sure they know they are heard.
Yeah.
And even if it's something you can't do anything about, oh my God, there's not enough parking spaces in the parking lot out front for us all to park. You can't fix that. There's nothing you can do about that. But make sure that they know they've been heard about
We can make them really skinny so that
it.
only bicycles and motorcycles can park here.
We can reserve like so many for staff, and then who needs the clients to park in? It's fine. But it's just, even if it's like really wild things, like, just let them know that
Yeah.
they are heard,
Yeah.
that you acknowledge that's important to them. And if you can do something about it, great. If you can't, then, thanks for sharing that with us. If we can do something in the future, we will. But right now, that's not something we can work on. But you've been heard, and
Yeah.
we know it's important to you.
Because I am wildly curious and not because this is important at all. Did you
Hey, I said, leave curiosity.
I say that all the time. Did you when you were having those conversations with those managers and those leaders, did you ever, or I'm going to assume the answer is yes to this, and that's me being judgmental, but did you often find people getting upset about, like, why would they be so concerned about the coffee pot and things like that? Was there a lot of that, or was it less about the content of what they were saying?
Honestly, a lot of the times what people are concerned about is the feedback's going to be about them.
Mhm.
And they don't know, like, why would we give them an opportunity to they're just going to rant and rave about us, about how we're terrible leaders and things like that. But actually, if you give them the opportunity, 9 times out of 10, they're actually not going to. Like, it's silly. These little, silly, what you view potentially as silly, of changing the coffee or getting different snacks or doing this, whatever, there are small things that you can just make someone's day a little bit brighter. And
Yeah.
they don't, often, a lot of times people, and this is generally not just in Batman, people think, oh, everyone's worrying about me, or like thinking about what I'm doing wrong or what I'm doing and things like that. And 9 times out of 10, they're not. Everyone's in their own little bubble worrying about what's
Yes.
going on with them.
Yeah.
And it was always interesting to have conversations with leaders who were just like, I'm really concerned that they're just going to use it as an opportunity to just like vent things out. And I'm like, you might have one or two that do. But that's a great way to then address, they're obviously unhappy.
Yeah.
There's something going on, and maybe you can sit down, have a meeting with them, work out what's going on. It's never actually normally about you. That's burnout. That's compassion fatigue. That is
Yeah.
other things. Um, if you ever are in a position where your entire team are telling you you're a bad leader because of XYZ examples, then maybe that's something you want to internalize. But 90% of the time, that is actually, I'd say 99.9% of the time, that's not what happens.
Yeah.
They want smaller, little actionable things.
Yeah. I find that almost just as intriguing. I like thrive on feedback. I want to
Right.
know all of it. Tell me the good, the bad, the ugly, all the things all the time. And it is interesting. Like, I understand that is not the norm, but it always intrigues me when people freak out that somebody might give them feedback about themselves. I'm like, why don't you wanna know? Because I am like, I wanna know so that I can be better constantly. That's just, like, how I am programmed, that it's hard for me to put myself in the shoes of somebody who would be worried to know that. And I get it, but I also don't get it because of just who I
But
am.
I think there's something in that with, I think they're great. And I think a lot of people who do get into leadership positions or want to get into leadership positions are actually more like you. They want to be better and make things better for others. Systematic problem from a broken system, right?
Mhm.
Because people always assume that feedback is going to be negative, and it's not. So, like a lot of times, something Hound is really practical about is we practice what we preach. We tell people like you should be doing these things in your hospital, but it'd be really stupid if we weren't doing them as a company,
Yeah.
because we want to practice what we preach. So we use Rally, the engagement and retention tool. We do 360 reviews and stuff like that. And oftentimes, like even with all of us, like if there's something like that, it's more normally put as constructive of, hey, you take on too many projects, you overcommit yourself, learn to delegate better and do things like that. And then that's good. I fall into that trap all the time. But it's just all those things of everyone. I think historically you get called into a meeting, like especially as a tech, a vet assistant, CSR, or someone like that. When you get pulled into a meeting with your leadership, it's not normally for a good thing.
Mhm.
Like it's a review where you're being told that you need to
Be
do
better.
better at certain things.
Yeah.
And I think that's just where the broken system is. We don't do reviews and meetings where things are like, hey, here's some praise for you or some
Mhm.
positive things. And again, this is something I will say in the last 6 to 12 months I've seen get a lot better. There are a lot more teams who are just doing, like, you will still get a full hour review even if you were the star of the show at the hospital would not function without you. Like you're still getting a full hour review where we dig deep into everything, whereas I think historically that person would probably get like a 5 minute, hey, you're doing great, thanks, and then that's it. And the person who needs improvement would get the full hour and would dread it. But I think a lot of places and a lot of leaders now are making sure everyone's getting equal time, everyone's being shared like good and bad, and like how, but no, not bad. Sorry, I shouldn't say bad. Good and areas of improvement
Yeah.
that we can do, and active steps on how to work on that areas of improvement and things like that. So I think it's just something that's part of a broken system, and I'm happy to say from my experience of working in vet med, it's getting better. Like the last 6 to 12 months have been seeing improvement on there from people I speak to on a day-to-day basis and things like that.
I agree. I think that a lot of the coaching, and I think some of it is also in because I'm in my own little bubble, right? And I coach managers to do the things that I do. And so I am, again, in my bubble of teaching people how to do it the way that
You do it right, yeah.
I don't want to say the way that it should be done, but it's the way that it should be done. And so what you just said of having these coaching sessions or these feedback sessions of positive feedback is something that I coach my managers to do all the time. And when we talk through the meetings that they've had with their team, and I ask them to go through whatever it is that they went through, and they go through the list, and it is very clearly the positive thing, the piece of crap thing, and the positive thing. I'm like, oh no, you
The
gave them the
positive
shit
sandwich.
sandwich. Not a fan, friends, not a fan. And listen, I get it. And I understand all of the psychology around that. But anyone who has been around the block for a hot second knows that a mile away and knows exactly what you're doing. And we're not here for it. So you try to give me the shit sandwich, and I'm I shut down immediately. So I don't want it. And
Well, that's
so
where, to
I,
interrupt you there for,
yeah,
oh, sorry, to interrupt you there for a second. That's where that phrase, it's how we've always done it. That is just how everyone's always been taught to
yeah,
do that.
no, I
And
don't want
so, but you're like said, everyone knows it, everyone expects it,
yeah.
everyone, like, we know that's coming. So maybe this is where we change things up.
And so I share with my team, like, recent conversation with one of my managers. She's like, yeah, but I told her what she did well. I was like, yeah, it would be even better if instead of sharing what she did well around the thing that you actually wanted to tell her that she's not doing well, is maybe have a separate meeting, separate
Yeah.
it, completely separate it, and say, you know what, Cheryl, today it's Cheryl. Last time it was Sally. I always have these random names. I don't even know a Cheryl. Anyway, you know what, Cheryl? You've done really great in whatever it is, right? Like, I've been noticing you've been trying to place catheters, and I noticed that you have hit every catheter in the last week. And I just want to let you know that I noticed it. And it doesn't have to
Yeah.
be formal, but let them know that you've seen it. And that will, like, you have made Cheryl's life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And timing is also everything. Don't then be like, also, Cheryl, can I go talk to you in the office? Because that
Right.
now your, like, catheter placement thing.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And now it's the way like humans' brains are function like that, like programmed like this anyway. If you do the even with the sandwich method, right, of good, bad, good, um, what that person's going to walk out of that meeting is remembering the bad thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you said in the two good parts
Yeah.
there. You could have told them you were going to give them $1,000 an hour, then told them that they were terrible at XYZ, and then told them that they're also going to get an extra day off a week paid. What they're going to remember is what you told them in the middle. Yes, at some point they're going to be excited about the other two things because I use very extreme examples there, but what they're going to remember is that thing in the middle. And also, I think a lot of practice managers are learning because of people like yourself and a lot of CE and blog posts and webinars, and I know even like psychology that people are learning about this now is for positive things, the best thing to do is in the moment. Like when that thing is happening, make sure that they're getting that praise in the moment
Yeah.
and the thing is happening. But don't do that to negative things. If
Right.
something's going wrong, like you still want to do it in a fairly timely manner of talking to people about stuff that's going on if it's something that's happening right now, but you don't want to do it in front of people. You don't want to do it necessarily in that moment, but even not doing things like you said there of, hey, the catheter placement was great, but can we go talk in my office in a minute? You make sure you separate the two because then they remember the good thing, and that is endorphins and things like psychologically there as well.
Yeah. The only thing that I would add there is to know your people. And the reason why I say that is, and maybe you have more data from the work that you do, but the reason why I say that is because I was given some feedback recently about something that had happened 3 months ago. And I was like, what would have been really helpful is if I would
Told me
have
3 months ago.
received this right away. For me personally, I need positive and negative or constructive feedback, like, immediately.
Yeah.
Honestly, even a day is almost too late, depending on what it is. I can't fix things that 3 months is it's long gone. And the reason why it was so late was because there was concern that I was not going to take the feedback well. And now we have discovered that
And
Suzanne
now it's
actually
worse.
takes feedback very well, and there lots of apologies have happened. But because I was told the feedback, and my response, they were surprised and they were like, I didn't think you were going to respond that way. I was like, this is how I respond to feedback, always.
But that is super important, is knowing your team,
Is
knowing how they
knowing your
receive
people.
feedback, how
Yeah.
they do things, and also not being anticipatory, and I can never say that word correctly,
Anticipatory.
anticipatory
Yeah.
for it. Don't assume everyone's going to take it badly.
Yeah.
Like, or if everyone's taking the feedback you're giving them badly, maybe you need to look at like how you're giving that feedback. Like maybe that's a red flag for you as a leader. If you're giving feedback and people are always taking it negatively, maybe that's something as a leader you need to step back and go, okay, is there a better way I can deliver this
Yeah.
feedback? Because obviously multiple people are being delivered the same, maybe not the same feedback, but the feedback the same way, and
Yeah.
they're all responding negative to it. Something I've been working on, and it's a bit of a like a wild, weird, off topic thing, but I was actually, so I'm sure many people have seen like the five love languages and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, can we like implement that like in some kind of communication styles in vet med? Like some people respond better to words, some people respond better to acts of service, and some people respond better to physical touch is probably not the best example in vet med. Like there are things where like you learn how your team best responds and best reacts to feedback and best provides feedback as well, to things like that, and then use that as that person. Even if you have to have like little files, whether digitally or like actual like paper files of people, hey, this person takes feedback best by talking to them in the moment right there about it. This person, however, isn't very good at, gets panicky if you're on a one-on-one. If you just call them into a one-on-one meeting, they're going to panic. So you maybe catch them, like maybe you send them an email with some information in, and you do it like in written form, and you know, remind them that it's not just because it's in written form, it's not formal versus the person you're talking to in person, but like work out what everyone's communication styles are and work. I mean, I appreciate this is a lot of extra work on leaders, but learn what your team's communication styles are and work with them on that, and work with them the best way that they can.
Yeah, there is a five, it's not love languages, but it's of the workplace. So there is a book.
Something like that, yeah. There's versions similar. I don't think it's been specifically applied to vet med, but it works in the
No, but
workplace,
it's
so
for the
you can
work.
kind of adapt it. Yeah,
Yeah, it's for the workplace. So there is one that is for work. So it
yeah,
very easily could be adapted for vet med. So I completely agree. I think that being able to I mean, I think there's a lot of conversation in the leadership circles around personality types and that
right.
kind of stuff. And so I think that there is definitely I have an old leader friend of mine who Anthony who talks a lot about the Enneagram. I think that there's a lot of space for all of those things. I don't think there's one that necessarily should be used
Right.
alone.
Absolutely not.
I've dug into all of them. I think that I have a couple of friends that are like really into disc training and that stuff. I do. I think that there's definitely a balance in all of it. I think that understanding what makes people tick. I think understanding what is the thing that your people, your person likes, doesn't like as much as you can. I don't think you're always going to know all of the things, especially when you have
No,
a really big team. And then you add in like the layers of neurodiversity, right? That's going to make things even more complex. And any other things that we have in our teams. You have people coming from all of these diverse backgrounds. And so it definitely makes things really complicated from a leader's perspective. But I think it goes back to what you and I both have said multiple times during this conversation is leading with curiosity and not
yeah,
being judgmental and asking more questions and trying really hard to not assuming you know what that person is thinking. And I really loved what you said before about that people are not thinking about you. I cannot tell you how many times a day I say that. I literally said this to somebody yesterday. Do you wake up thinking about how you want to hurt somebody else? And they were like, no. I was like, so what makes you think that people are waking up thinking that they want to hurt you? And she was like,
yeah,
I was like, you have to assume good intent. And I know that there are definitely people out there that don't, but like by and large. So I know you started off earlier talking about your journey into vet med and how you left practice because of burnout. Do you think, as a hospital manager listening today, where burnout and turnover is high and morale is low, and they're thinking, like, where should I start? If you could give somebody having experienced that a step one, what would you say?
it feels like an obvious step one, and also probably not an easy step one, but it's honestly talking to your team. Something I talked to someone about this yesterday, ironically, was a lot of people when they go, oh my gosh, I have huge turnover rates, I need to concentrate on keeping staff, things like that. Oh my God, build culture, let's get better employee engagement, all those things. The brain goes into we need everybody to get on really well and hang out and be social and be like I hate this phrase, but be like a family. No, it's work. You do not need to be like that. Like, honestly, I hate when I see job ads that say we're like a family, all those kind of things. That's, you don't know everyone's relationship with their family, so you don't say that. But what you do need is your team to be communicative and respect each other. And that's, you can't do that without talking to them.
Yeah.
So don't try and force. A lot of times when people jump on the culture retention bandwagon, they will do things like, oh, we need to go do away days and go take the team, do these things, and everyone be super social. But you don't know what everyone's likes, dislikes, you know, how they want to hang out. Some people do just want to come to work and be at work and then go home and not have anything to do with work or anyone they work with. And there's nothing wrong with that. They'll be, as long as they are like respectful and nice to everybody when they're there and they do their job and they collaborate as a team. So it's honestly the number one step is talk to your team. Find out, your team are going to tell you where the biggest like holes and weaknesses and where the biggest positives are in your clinic. So talk to them about that.
Yeah. I think that's really great advice.
And honestly, again, opening the communication, and that can be your doctors, that can be your technicians, that can be your kennel staff, that could be your intern who comes in, like a kennel assistant, high school student that comes in and does a little bit of animal handling and cleaning for you once a week. Make sure you're talking to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't just sit in your office and not be seen. You like be out there and be with them and know your people. Let them get to know you.
Some of the best leaders I know and some of the best practice managers I know, like they will be able to tell you a little weird piece of information about almost every one of their staff, whether they have a team of 6 or 600. And like, obviously not always necessarily, hey, I'm going to go up to you and go, hey, randomly, what's Sally's birthday? And they're going to be like, I don't know, like she's number 200 of 600 stuff. But they'll probably know, they'll at least acknowledge they know who Sally is, which department she works in, all of those kind of things, and have a little bit of information. Now, of course, obviously that's always going to be harder with bigger teams and smaller teams, but at that point, start delegating to your faculty team leaderships. Leaders don't have to be the practice managers. Leaders can be technicians. Leaders can be some of the vet assistants. Like, leadership isn't necessarily a title. It can be just something that someone's a leader in the team.
Yeah. Some of the best companies that I have worked for or in or with, however you want to say that, are the ones where the people that in my mind shouldn't know my name. For example, right? The CEO of the company, who the hell am I, right? That the CEO has no need to know who I am, in my opinion, but they do. Right now, where I sit in my position right now, yes, the CEO should know who I am. But like in past companies, when I'm a technician, the CEO of a very large organization knowing who I am feels weird. But in an organization that the CEO like knows who I am, that exists. And there are like, to me, that person making it a point to know their name, they might not know anything about them, but they know their name. That's important.
Exactly.
And that just shows like they're leading by example and showing that it's important to know who they are. And in such a large organization, that's a hard thing to remember, knowing that there's 3,000 people in our organization or more, and that person's name, like that's a big deal. Even if, I don't know, maybe you looked at some spreadsheet before you walked in the building, but in my mind, in that day, like he knew who I was. Oh my God. Like that's a big deal. Those are some of the
small gestures.
Right. Like
It doesn't have to be like a big grand gesture. It can be something very small.
The fact that you went out of your way to know who I was that day is a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I agree. I think that, know who your people are for sure. What is, shifting a small gear as we are coming to our hour here, what are you learning right now, professionally or personally, that's shaping how you show up in the field?
Honestly, a big thing I've been looking at a little bit more recently, especially with the role that I've been pivoted into with Hound, is actually like adult learning and how people learn. As like we're taught in schools like about everyone, even kids learn differently, right? But I think there's definitely some more impact in what's going on there with children and the way things, especially with like neurodiversity and things like that. But sometimes that isn't always necessarily applied to adults. It maybe is so more if you're going back to school, like you're doing your MBA program and things like that. Like they're probably a bit more cognizant of it there. But when we do things like webinars or continuing education events, sometimes I don't think we really look into how different people learn. And I know you and I have had conversations about this offline about how there are, like, I'm one of those people that, despite the fact I host a ton of 1 hour webinars, I sometimes struggle sitting at my computer for an hour listening to someone present for an hour. I do much better with like much shorter little segments of like things, or being practically doing stuff like wet labs and stuff like that. So like looking at the different ways that adults learn and how you can then use what you're trying to teach, how you can then pivot that into those adult learning things. Like, again, something you and I talked about offline, doing small, like little 5 minute segments of things, or snippets, or doing 20-minute podcasts, or as we're doing like an hour long podcast, or having something where people can be doing other things and listening to you, or there's something that's interactive that they have to be involved in, those kind of things. So that's something that I've been, especially as part of my new role, is learning, okay, if we're providing resources for our community, and especially for our community who don't necessarily have access to things in other platforms, how can we meet them where they're at?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to, as I'm doing more of these, I'm trying to create more clips of the juicy, meaty parts of them to create more engagement for those people that maybe aren't going to sit through the entire episode, so that they don't miss the, not saying that the rest of the content isn't great, but that they don't miss some of the pieces that are really good. There might be like pieces of longer conversation that can be pulled out that are like that golden nugget that I really don't want anybody to miss, that I will drop as a short, or like on YouTube or on TikTok or Instagram. So I've been trying to do that a little bit more. That is definitely something that I've tried to do with these episodes too, because I know that they can get a little bit long and it's definitely hard to sit through them.
It's all a lot of important topics, but
Yeah.
not potentially every important topic we talk about is like what
Yeah.
we've been talking about today, right? Like some of this stuff might be super useful. There might be some people who are like, hey, the first 20 minutes were really useful, but then you went off onto a subject that I'm already like, I know about this.
Yeah.
It's fine. And then, but that's nothing wrong with that at all. Like
Yeah.
I'll take huge offense. It's fine. But
How rude.
because it is all about me,
You
obviously.
didn't listen to the whole thing. How dare you?
How dare
What
you?
is I like to ask this question, and some people get really thrown off and some people have it right in their back pocket. What is rapid fire one book, if I had to say, or if I had to say, if you had to say one book that every leader today had to read, go.
Okay, I do have one that I love, and I will say I'm terrible. I don't read a lot of books, and I don't have a lot of books on there. But Amy Newfield, Oops, I Became a Manager. I love that book. I actually I've met Amy a few times. Ironically, I was gifted that book when I accidentally became a manager at my previous job. And I was like, are you trying to tell me something? Like, that I should be reading this? Thanks, I think. But yeah, it's an easy read. It's super relatable, tools and tips in there and things like that. So that's probably my first go-to there.
I have to get Amy on here so that
Yeah, great.
we can talk about the first time that I met Amy and I can embarrass her publicly again, because it was
100%.
I really embarrassed myself, but it was a very embarrassing story that I will not rehash here today, but it is one of those that I fangirled real hard. And
No, I have. Yeah.
yeah, it was bad. But now we're
Hey,
good.
nothing.
We're good now. I can see Amy, we can hug it out, we can laugh about it, but it was really bad.
No, I get it. There's certain people in vet med that I'm still like that, and they're like, "Why are you like freaking out about me? I'm just this person." I have had the honor. Two of the people I've worked with that I've loved, and I really want to shout out here is Dr. Cindy Trice and Dr. Jessica Wilson. Like for both of them, like I minorly fangirled when I first got to meet them and got to work with them, and both of them looked at me like I was like in the nicest possible way, like I was stupid for fangirling over them. And I was like, but like for Dr. Wilson, I was like, you're a veterinarian who's a bodybuilder, who's got all these things. You're an Olympian champion, like all these, like you've got this whole other thing. And towards the end of her and I working together, like she would call me from when she's at shows and we'd be discussing vet med things, but she'd be like, they're getting her spray tan for her show that was coming in
That's
and things like
amazing.
that. Like it was always really wild. And I was like, yeah, now I like me 2 years ago would have been freaking out about being on the phone with you at this point. And now it's just, oh yeah, this is a normal Wednesday. And the same with Dr. Trice. Every time I reach out to her for help, because I'm working with Hound, Relief Rover was acquired by Hound back in 2023. And so we have worked together very closely a lot over the last few years. I always tell her she's who I want to be when I grow up. Yeah, but the same thing, I don't think she ever really realizes how much of an impact on the industry she has. And I'm still always honored to work with her every day.
You're so funny. Yeah. I had the honor of having someone come up to me and be very minimally fangirly, not nearly as bad as I was to Amy, but it was weird enough for me to recognize what was happening. And it was very much, oh my God, I follow you on social media. Can you sign my book kind of thing? And was like,
Aww.
oh, this is happening. Oh, this is weird. This is what I did to her on a much grander scale. And I had to post about it because I was like, Amy, I'm so sorry for doing what I did to you because that was so awkward. And also, I'm so honored that somebody would actually do that to me at this point in my career. And if it only gets worse from here, God help me. And it just,
I'm noted. I'm going to fangirl at you when I see you next.
you can't. We've met in person before. You can't.
I know.
But it's just,
You're going to do it.
it's just such a weird, it's a weird thing when you're like recognized in person by somebody you don't know. It is a very strange feeling, but I guess one that you have to, when you put yourself out there, one that you just have to be
Yeah.
expecting. But when you are the fan, when you're the idiot that does that to somebody else, is very,
I've totally done it. I've been there too.
so anyway, I agree. Very good book. That was a tangent that doesn't necessarily need to be put on the podcast. But no, I agree. Good book. And don't worry, no judgment here that you're not a big reader. I tend to be. And there's an assumption that many people do read, but also fine if you don't. So cool beans.
I will say, I will probably caveat that. I read a lot, but not like work or vet med stuff. Like I have
That's
a hard
also,
time with, because I'm just like, this is my job and I would
yeah.
like that part of my life to be
Yeah.
relaxing,
And hey,
not.
I should clarify, maybe like what is one book that like everyone should read? It doesn't have to be vet med, because I'll be honest with you, there are definitely like books that I would say that like everybody should read that doesn't have to be vet med, right?
That's
Like
true.
the
That's true.
Akbar series, I think everyone should read. I'm just going to say it out loud.
Oh, yep. No, I agree.
And that's not vet
Already,
med or leadership. Like we should just all
that's just
be
them.
Valkyrie and call it a day. Where can people follow your work, connect with you, or learn more about you?
Yeah, so a couple of different ways. Obviously, through anything like my community partnership help stuff and things like that. Like obviously through Hound, you go to hound.vet. There's ways to connect with me there. My work email is just lucy@hound.vet. You can reach out to me anytime. And then for me personally, I am very sporadic with posting on social media. Sometimes I remember to do it, and sometimes I don't. I will say with the holidays coming up, it will probably be a period of don't. But you can find me on LinkedIn or on Instagram. On LinkedIn, I'm just Lucy Nash RVT. It'd be super easy to find. And on Instagram, it's Lucy Lupop RVT. I try to post some stuff there about, I know we didn't really talk about with leadership here, but we talked about my weird history in the beginning. Is I feel like I have a very unique position of being a vet tech in industry. And so I do, through working at Just Super Dogs, my previous company, and Hound now, I've had a really weird career with both of them, and it's been wonderful, but I definitely would label it as weird. And so I try and share like some of the experiences of that kind of thing to show for vet techs that there is life after clinic and things you can do and still be in the industry. And it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Some of it is tougher things too, but I want to share that experience to show vet techs that again, there's life after clinic.
Well, I was going to ask one last question, which was, is there anything else on your heart that we did not talk about? So if there's anything in that or anything else that you wanted to expand on?
Yeah, I know we're going a little long here, so I'll try and keep it short. But yeah, just we vet tech utilization is something that is really close to my heart. But honestly, I always tell people it's not just vet tech utilization, it's honestly full team utilization. Everybody, vet assistants, CSRs, like kennel attendants, everyone should be being utilized and brought to the top of their game in their position. But my biggest thing is like burnout is a thing we are having to deal with. Compassion fatigue is something we have to deal with. As technicians specifically, we have a very physical job. And so there is a point where our bodies just can't do it anymore for whatever reasons. Maybe our minds can't do it anymore, but maybe our body actually physically cannot crawl around on the floor with dogs anymore. But that doesn't mean you have to leave the industry. Your knowledge, your experience is something that can be so useful for so many other parts of the industry. There's academia. You can go help teach the next generation of vet med. There is research. There is like new companies popping up all the time that someone potentially, we talked to at the beginning of this podcast about people coming from outside the industry who could really use like some insider information to make sure they're marketing their products correctly and make sure they're being ethical about the way they do things. There's so many different opportunities for veterinary technicians out there. Veterinarians get told about what their opportunities are outside of clinical practice, and I feel like vet techs don't as much. And so if I can be a voice and an advocate for that, like that's what I want to do as well.
Yeah, I love that. I think that you absolutely hit the nail on the head with all of the things that doctors are shared. Doctors are given in vet school a lot of opportunities to go in different directions, and we are really funneled into clinics. And
And then up to practice management if
yeah,
that's where you want to grow.
yeah, and unless you are in an area where there is something very specific, and what I mean by that is like if you live in a rural area where large animal is very prominent, then it makes sense that you would go into large animal. If you live in an area where you can get an externship at a zoo, then maybe getting into a zoo is something that you could do. That was an opportunity that was afforded to me. I wound up not doing that because of a like where I lived situation. I couldn't get there easily, but I
Yeah.
actually got an externship at the Central Park Zoo. So that was actually where I was going to go. And then I pivoted and wound up in emergency. So a crazy life story, right? Who knows where I would have wound up if I would have wound up in,
Right. Yeah.
but had I not lived in New York City, right, in the New York City area, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. But because of the way that our like tech schools are, and a lot of people now are going on online tech school, it's your opportunity to move into academia or even industry. People don't really know what is available to them. So I think that
No.
hearing from people like you who have moved into those quote unquote different jobs, and I see it all the time online, people are asking what else is available other than pet poison control. And
Right. Or insurance.
there are people like Dr. Mark Massaro, and there's another one that I've recently seen on LinkedIn that keep posting non-clinical jobs. So there are groups on LinkedIn that are posting non-clinical jobs. So if you're not on LinkedIn, I would definitely encourage people to get on there and to take a look at what's available, because there's stuff available for technicians for sure.
Yeah, and the other thing as well, because I always say people are always welcome to reach out to me for these kind of things. That if you are someone who's, hey, I want to know what my opportunities are in the industry. I want to know things like that. If you know a technician who's in industry, even if it's your Hills rep or your Rural Canum rep or any of your pharmaceutical reps or anything like that, or someone you've just randomly met on LinkedIn, hello, you can always reach out to me. But ask away, because sometimes it is just about the networking. And
Yeah.
I just to share a very short story,
Yeah.
when I started working at the pet food company I worked at, they had only previously for their vet team hired vets. They had not hired technicians. They just were like, okay, we need people to go do educational events. It's just vet. We're going to send vets to go do it. A friend of mine worked in their customer service team and was like, hey, my friend who would be really good at this job is looking for a job right now. she's a vet tech, not a vet, but I think you should talk to her. And they were like, oh, maybe we could. I truly believe that I was like a test subject almost in that, but in a good way. Like, they
Yeah.
were like, do we think that the vet professionals will listen to a vet tech educate, not just a vet? And we learned that absolutely vet professionals will listen to vet professionals. It doesn't matter, like, as long as they are the expert on the subject. And so that was a team that historically hadn't hired technicians. Now that company has a team of vet techs that do handle a lot of their education and their community events and stuff. So like sometimes it's just an introduction somewhere, or someone who knows someone who can be your voice to just at least get you a foot in the door, an interview, a hello, a conversation at a conference, and you never know where that's going to lead.
Yeah. And sometimes it's shooting your shot and just saying,
Yep. Do it yourself.
hey, I'm interested in doing this, and would you give me a second and talk to me? Because I
Yeah,
wound up with
absolutely.
a conversation with the CEO of Indie Vets a bunch of years ago because I had an idea. Did it do anything?
Yeah,
No, but it did get me the meeting. So
exactly.
you just never
People
know.
want to speak to people. Yeah, you never know where things are going to land you. So if you don't shoot your shot, you don't know.
Exactly. So, listen, Lucy, it has been a blast chatting with you, and I'm sure we will probably do this again.
We will. And again, I did warn you at the beginning. I don't know how to shut up.
No, that's cool. Me neither. So we are a great bunch.
Well, again, thank you for having me on.
Of course. Thank you so much. If you're listening right now and something in you keeps saying, I want to lead differently in this profession, this one's for you. Leading Veterinary Teams is my private leadership community built specifically for veterinary leaders who are done doing this work alone. This is not a course. This is not a loud group. It's a focused, high trust space for people who genuinely care about their teams and their growth. Most of the guests you hear on this podcast are already inside the community. They're part of the conversations. They're sharing what's working in their hospitals. They're sharing what's hard right now and how they're navigating leadership in real time. Inside, you get direct access to me, live leadership coaching, practical tools you can use immediately, and honest conversations that we don't always get to have in public. If you resonate with this, I want to personally invite you in. The link to join is in the show notes, and I would truly love to build this with you.